Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Reinsurance Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jared Lee.
And I'm Ben Rose.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much. And welcome not only to another episode, but a special episode.
Special indeed. Well, we've been doing this for a little while now, and so much happens in our industry over such short windows of time. I thought it might be fun for us to do a quick sort of month in review. And this might be something, if people like it, we do each month, perhaps. It would be 12 times a year. But what I wanted to do is take a step into April and look at kind of what's happened this last month. And I know you've collected a list of sort of the bigger stories across the industry. So let's dive, I think, right into this.
Yeah, and April, as reinsurance aficionados will know, I hope I've said that correctly, will know, is the special month for a renewal season as well. So we often talk about 1/1, 1st of January. That is followed typically by 1/4 in reinsurance people's minds as the next big renewal season. So the first.
Or 4/1 for the American.
Or 4/1, I should say. Yeah, that's always funny. 1/1, you never have this problem.
No, exactly. That's why it's so popular.
In America, we say 1/1. But yeah, anyway, let's crack on with the news because this is supposed to be a short bulletin. Sorry, we are going to get sidetracked anyway, as normal, but we'll try and keep it punchy. First of all, how did the renewals go? The news we're hearing is that they were actually quite undramatic and orderly. I think that was the quote from James Kent at Gallagher Re. Undramatic 1/4 renewals with capacity neither abundant nor insufficient.
Yeah. Well, and this is, as the industry folks will know, very much a Japanese-centric update, right? What did the Japanese market do, which is predominantly the big driver of the 1/4 or 4/1 business section. I think there's really interesting things is there's still rumors that for the summer renewals, especially U.S. exposures, there's still concern that it will be quite dramatic. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait one more renewal season to see if what happened in the Japanese market holds true for the rest of the market as well. But it was an interesting development, I think.
Certainly, and I think as well, looking at whether we do a May 1 or not, we'll have to do a June 1 to look at 1/6 or 6/1 renewals, because I think of what's going on in Florida at the moment in terms of potential downgrades for quite a lot of the cedents there. Sorry, for the insurers there. It's looking quite difficult for a lot of those companies in terms of whether anyone's going to be willing to reinsure them because of the results they post, and if they're going to be reinsured, the kinds of rate online that those reinsurers are looking for. So how much they charge versus how much they're willing to pay out each year is now creeping above and sometimes well above 50% rate online. So we're hearing rumors of some of these cedents, so if they want to get those attritional layers placed, it's going to be 60% of what we'd pay out. Yeah. So mad numbers, but exciting. We'll see how 1/6 goes.
And listen to the show about reinsurance pricing if any of that was confusing to you.
Indeed. So my next piece of news for you is around mergers and acquisitions. We thought we'd do a bit of an update, as there's been good sort of movement towards closing of deals that we've all been watching with great excitement. So on one hand, Partner Re, who had been sort of owned previously by the Exor family group, was recently, in October, announced going to be acquired by Covéa. That has now been approved by the European Commission this month. So that's a exciting development. That's moving forwards. $9 billion deal, quite a lot of change and excitement, I'm sure, for this massive group.
Yeah, and that's one that's sort of kind of like the other sort of Ann Willis conversations, a name that's been floating around for a while and has been bumping into merger conversations for quite a while now. So it feels like we're moving towards a resolution.
It was like a perfect dating moment. It was on one hand, I think it was clear to a lot of us that Exor were looking to sell Partner Re for a while, and likewise clear that Covéa was looking to buy a reinsurer for a long time, and they found each other. It was meant to be. So that's good. They found each other, and now they're happily
at a Bridgerton ball.
Move forwards at a Bridgerton themed ball. Exactly. The other big M&A news, of course, this month, which again saw good progress towards happening, is the Berkshire Allegheny deal, which I think was, viewed very positively by the industry in terms of where that's going to go. I think it will mean a lot of change for the entities within Allegheny, so TransRe especially, and the ILS components that are in there as well, just because of the broader balance sheet strength of Berkshire and that group. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But the news there this month was that the sort of no shop window, or has sort of now come to its end. So Transre did approach Al-Ahli did go out and approach some other potential buyers, but nobody was going to put up as much as Berkshire were. So that's going through at around $11 billion.
Yeah, and there was that push a little bit kind of at the very end to sort of see if they could get the price up, and there was already the top price and the top conversation. I think you're right, though. This is another one that is really playing to the strengths of what Berkshire is looking for, right? When you think about how they leverage capital and deploy it to over time to offset losses and play a much longer term game with how they leverage their assets, the access to ILS, et cetera, is going to be it's playing right into their strong suit, which is why I think they offered as much as they did.
And that brings us on actually to another bit of news around capacity. So if you look at the industry as a whole and how much capacity that it represents, Gallagher Re have just published a report showing that it has increased sizably, and actually driven, it looks like, by traditional capacity rather than non-traditional capacity, which is still growing. We're still seeing more and more ILS capacity coming into the market. But actually what was, I think last year, 500 and something billion of reinsurance capacity, they now reckon is around $635 billion of traditional reinsurance capacity, bringing the total to now some 730 billion-ish of capacity.
And that's a huge jump, right? Like it as a percentage, it's significant. There's still a lot of interest into what's really driving, because ILS is an interesting one because it seems like it makes sense. There's a lot of capital interested in the market that's just trying to find a way in, and as long as that door opens up, that money kind of comes in more effectively. Such a big jump in traditional capacity I find very, very interesting. It might be what's driving the sort of, as we touched on at the top of this show, the market not hardening or not sort of shifting quite as dramatically might be a result of that as well. That capital is looking to be deployed. But do you have any thoughts as to what is the underlying driver for the traditional capacity climb?
Well, I think it maybe goes back to the opening comment from James Kent around the orderly renewal season with capacity being not insufficient.
Yeah.
There's still appetite to get involved in the reinsurance game because there's still that demand. And I think as long as that demand is there, and there's so much innovation enabling the barriers to entry in reinsurance to reduce at the moment in terms of new players who want to set up, it looks like a good time to get stuck in and to bring new capacity into the game. So I think that's what's probably driving the uptick in traditional capacity. People see it as a sector that's promising and is getting good results. And actually one of the other exciting pieces of news, which I think might be driving this, is profitability of the sector. So in the same survey that the Gallagher Re folks did, they noticed, which is similar actually to Lloyd's performance as well. If you've read my recent Lloyd's article, you'll know all about this. But as
all the links in the show notes.
as a sector, reinsurance, reinsurers, I should say, posted their first sub 100% combined ratios. Find out what that means in our accounting episode again. But their first underwriting profit really since 2014. Yeah. So, which is a scary statistic that it's not been profitable since 2014. But if you're a reinsurer in 2022, then at last you're likely to have made a profit purely on your underwriting.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, it's been a very long time coming. We talked about sort of Berkshire's model, and they're one of the few firms that's built a model around making profits without an underwriting profit. But most traditional carriers are reliant on the underwriting results giving them profits. And you're right, them having an opportunity to sort of realize some gains for the first time in a long time is very appealing. So I think you'll see. I mean, and this is the difficulty of the market cycles, where more money will flow in now, prices will sort of begin to adjust a little bit and continue to compress against those margins and those gains. But very positive, I think, for the reinsurers who've been sort of in need of generating some revenues and some profit.
Absolutely. And then a final topic for this month, I think it's been on everyone's minds, and for us it's a really devastating topic that we're being very sensitive about because of how many people are being affected by this. effectively what's happening in Ukraine right now with the Russian invasion. A lot of people are asking us what's happening to the reinsurance industry as a result. Initially, obviously, nobody knows for sure yet exactly what's going to happen, but we are now starting to see news come out about how different reinsurers think they're going to be affected, how different losses are expected to pan out. One of the big stats that came out this month was firstly the estimated worst case loss for the aviation market of around $35 billion if all of the planes that are currently stranded in Russia are not returned to Western nations. So that was a huge potential market loss. I think Munich Re put their hands up and said they've got at least 500 million exposed to that this month. But in general as well, that's also been supported by the news that the Kremlin have declared that yes, indeed, they're not returning those planes. So we're watching that one. For the industry at the moment, that's probably the biggest area hit in terms of insured losses at the moment.
Yeah, and this is where the complexity of a global reinsurance market comes in, is when you have an event like this that impacts so much. So not only is it those specific use cases in a very claims-related position, and you're seeing PCS and S&P sort of coming out with estimates across for industry-wide losses, but you're looking at companies ceasing operations and whether they're going to pull out or not pull out of different geographies as a result of actions of their governments, and that has a sort of knock-on effect to what does it do for those economies and everything else. And what we talk about, the impact that reinsurance has on stabilizing economies. If all of this begins to go away, what does that leave some of these nation states with as a protection mechanism? And I think aviation being a really big one. The other thing that's really interesting is Munich came out with a report a couple of days ago about them pushing for new wordings, right? And this is always a thing that is underlying reinsurance, where they're looking to introduce war exclusions to all their cyber policies and things, because there's this real perception that more warfare will be sort of done electronically, done digitally, and pushing towards things like that. So how do they introduce wordings to protect themselves against some of those things? It'll be interesting to watch this in future as well, sort of similar to following 9/11. How will the industry respond to paying claims? If planes had a war exclusion, does confiscation via war count or not? Like, there'll be a lot of nuances the industry begins to unwrap and unpack what they're liable for and what they're not. So this will be something I think we'll continue to talk about and touch on. But you're right, it's been a devastating event from a humanitarian perspective, and the industry will be sort of kind of stuck in the middle of it in a lot of ways. So it'll be one that we'll continue to watch.
Absolutely, and if nothing else, it really does highlight the role of reinsurance as being, I think we had that weird quote a long time ago of, not a wind blows and not a event happens, in much more eloquent terms, obviously, without the reinsurance industry being involved in some way. And unfortunately, that includes the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're really seeing that come out now. But hopefully, by the time we do this monthly roundup next month, we'll have some better news on that event and all sorts of other exciting reinsurance topics.
Indeed. So that's our first monthly wrap-up of the news. So look forward to these ones going forward, but look forward to chatting again on the next one. With that, thank you, everyone.